All right, welcome in another installment of Live Well with UCI Health. I'm Ryan Manna with iHeartRadio, the LNK Morning Show on KOST 103.5. Dr. Robert Katzer is our guest right now. I don't typically do this, but your introduction, I do need to read this because I don't want to mess anything up. You're a very impressive man. Dr. Katzer, UCI Health emergency medicine physician, professor in the UC Irvine School of Medicine's Department of Emergency Medicine, assistant director of the department's Wilderness Medicine Fellowship Program. You also teach wilderness medicine to medical students and residents. Did I get that right?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oof, thank you. That's a big resume. That's a lot you got going on. Let's first of all talk about this, and I'm coming in like super naive here. I did not know there was a Wilderness Medicine Fellowship Program. I don't know that a lot of people know that.
Yeah, there are wilderness medicine fellowship programs throughout the country, and they are available to many different types of doctors. Obviously, we would assume that emergency physicians are a likely good fit for wilderness medicine, but certainly other types of doctors are involved as well.
So what is before we jump into some of the stuff, the meat and potatoes here, what does a day look like for you? What's your day-to-day like?
For me, lots of meetings, so lots of non-exciting stuff.
Okay.
As you expect with administration.
Yeah.
But, may have a shift in the ER.
Okay.
Maybe working with the fire department, several years, having days where I'm working in the field with their rescue unit.
Yeah.
At times deployed to disaster zones for the federal government, which I don't do anymore, but previously. So a smattering of different things. Definitely, emergency medicine is a career where you have to, wake up and look at your calendar for the day because it can be vastly different.
What is emergency medicine? Like what falls under that? What is that?
Yeah, so emergency medicine was told by me before medical school by an emergency physician that managing anything that can get carried through the door for about 2 hours.
Okay.
So a very broad set of diseases and injuries that you have to assess.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't send anything home that needs emergency treatment and start that appropriate treatment or arrange for the follow-up if the patient's safe for discharge. That's emergency medicine in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's cool. So obviously every year, I think the first snowfall or two, we see on the news and we hear stories of people, maybe not doing so well up in the mountains on a hike, getting stranded, getting lost, whatever. Is that something that you deal with?
Yeah. For many years, I worked as a flight medic on an air rescue unit in our area. And so that unit would periodically be involved in those missions.
Yeah,
for sure.
What makes our mountains, because we do have, quite a vast topography here. What makes them more difficult, and more dangerous, I guess, this time of year? Yeah,
I think this area is so unique. And we have the best weather, and I'll go toe to toe with anyone who wants to argue otherwise. But despite having the best weather, we have these mountains, especially Baldy and San Gorgonio, that are nearby, and they have pretty significant elevation given how close we are to the ocean and how close we are to major cities. And so it's very easy from a distance standpoint from someone to go from 78 degrees to refrozen snow and ice. And perhaps easier here than a lot of places in the world. And I think that does add an element of danger that's more easily accessible than in other areas of the world.
Did you call it refrozen ice? Is that what you call it?
Yeah. So snow that's melted and then frozen over.
So is that more dangerous?
I'd pick snow over ice any day. It's less slippery.
But now, I'm like don't put me anywhere near that. I'm fine on the ground. Is there a bigger problem when the ice is covered by snow? You don't know what's under it?
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
Yeah. So refreezing, layering, all these are issues for traction and avalanches and all those inherent dangers.
Yeah. Like I grew up in the Midwest. I think you said you were from the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
So I know that even just driving a car, you tend to not know what's under the snow. If it's snowing, you don't know if there's black ice under there, right? So there's an element of danger just even driving through this stuff.
For sure. But you do know the road underneath it is relatively flat based on construction standards. Okay. And that assurance doesn't exist in the mountains on trails.
Not. What's the problem, I guess? Do you find that people maybe bite off more than they can chew, so to speak, in getting out there? They don't even understand the risks?
I could, lay out what some of the possible things are.
Yeah.
The mountains are like the ocean. You could go on the ocean on a day and there is very little danger. You're on a boat, there's no waves, everything's wonderful. And you could go back there a week later and be in a life-threatening environment. And the mountains are similar to that with weather, especially if you compare hiking in the summer to the same mountain in the winter after snow and ice.
Yeah.
And at that point, I wouldn't even call it hiking. I would call it now mountaineering. So same place, same location, different activity based on weather. And I think that's the big change.
Mm-hmm. Is there an element of maybe bravado that gets in people's way? They get in their own way where it's like, I know this mountain, I've done this before, but they did it in the summer and now it's an entirely different thing.
Yeah, I could certainly speculate that someone says, hey, I've done that before.
Yeah.
Just like, people go to the beach and they can swim when there's no rip current and there's low swell. They go to the same beach and maybe feel confident based on that experience. And it ends up being a very dangerous decision.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly think the fact that these mountains are so close to the city also may make people feel a little more comfortable.
Like a false sense of security.
Yeah. We're not on Everest. You know, I can't speak for people that have had issues, of course, but we could certainly speculate that could be a problem.
Yeah. So, okay, let's say someone's going to go, mountaineer on one of these things. What would you recommend people take before they start this thing? What special equipment or set of skills?
Yeah. So skills are a big part of this. And I am certainly not a knowledgeable mountaineer myself. But I think skills and using the skills with the equipment. So what are the big equipment items? Anywhere where you are far from civilization and you may need emergency assistance, mountain, no mountain, snow, no snow, having a GPS beacon, whether that be a PLB, personal locator beacon, or another two-way satellite messenger that allows you to request help, or one of the newer phones that is equipped with satellite capabilities. That's a must, because when you are out in the wilderness, a lot of times there is no cell signal, right? And we live all day, all night. We assume our cell phones are going to work and they're going to solve all our problems.
Yes.
Until there's no signal and there's no battery.
Yeah.
And by the way, when there's no signal, your battery works really hard to find a signal and then there's no battery.
Right.
And even if you're out there and there is a signal, based on how the location works with triangulating towers, the accuracy of that location is not the accuracy you get with Uber or with your Google Maps or other those opt-in apps. So it is less accurate. So if I were to try to rescue someone based on a cell phone location versus a satellite position, 10 times out of 10, satellite position is going to allow me to find them faster. Oh. So that is on all-weather advice, I think. But in regards to once we're dealing with snow and ice and medium angle or adjustment to medium angle terrain, you really need to have crampons. You need to have an ice axe to arrest a fall, a helmet, and you need to have time spent using that equipment in a non-life-threatening event.
So you can't or you wouldn't recommend someone just order all this stuff and go do it. Yeah. No.
It's like anything else in life.
Yeah.
Right? We all start bad at things and we practice and we get better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you practice? How do you start using this?
So you can use that equipment in an area that is low angle to get used to it. Medium angle with no consequences if you lose control. Those are types of areas where you can train on it.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I think makes a lot of people nervous is the use of microspikes. Microspikes are a traction device you can put on essentially any shoe. And they may give a false sense of security when compared to crampons. Crampons are very sharp, very large traction device that attaches to a compatible mountaineering boot, and they give a much better grip than microspikes. Microspikes are okay walking down the sidewalk in the Midwest after a storm.
Yeah.
Trying to take the trash out, maybe,
right.
where the risk is relatively low.
Yeah.
If you look at many of the people who have had issues in the mountains, a lot of them are using microspikes. I can't place a causal relationship, but there's certainly an association, and I wouldn't use them and rely on them for traction in the mountains.
What are some other mistakes that you've found that people make? Common mistakes.
Yeah. You also look at lost person behavior, and there's a whole area of science of how do people make decisions and what type of people make what type of decisions. There's patterns of a group of people go up and one person continues and the rest of the group goes down.
Yeah.
And we often hear this is the people that get lost. So I think if you're in a group of people and maybe the group's thinking about turning around, maybe the whole group should turn around. Maybe that should be a key. And I think when you're planning, you got to plan out the weather, right? That's your risk. Plan out your risk. And you also want to say, hey, these are our criteria. If we hit this criteria, we're turning around. That way, in the moment, you don't have to make that emotional decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because maybe one person feels a certain way about something, right? But if you're decided as a group, right, it eliminates that whole situation.
I like winning.
Yeah,
I don't
you do.
like turning around. Yeah. And a lot of people are like that.
I know.
And sometimes coming home is more important than winning.
Yeah.
And it's really important to set those criteria before you leave and then stay disciplined to those. And that may be a life-saving technique. There was a book written by the doctor who worked for a long time at the Grand Canyon Clinic, and it's called Death in the Canyon. And it's a really interesting book. I read it when I was working at the clinic briefly because it was kind of interesting to read while I'm working at the canyon.
Yeah.
I had thought that more people would increase the risk of death, but in the canyon, actually solo hikers. And why that's more dangerous, I don't know. Maybe one person says, and that gives the other person the ability to say, okay, we'll turn around.
Okay.
I don't know. But certainly being a young male hiking alone, at least in the Grand Canyon, was an independent risk factor for a fatal expedition.
Wow.
So
That's really interesting.
yeah.
What about dress? What do you recommend for?
Yeah. So whenever you're out and about, and especially you're going to elevation, you're exerting yourself, it's all about layering, right? We know that as the elevation changes, the temperature is going to change. Your level of activity is going to change your amount of warmth. And so you want to have a lot of layers that you can adjust throughout the day. And when you're layering clothing, there's 3 layers in general. There's the base layer. The base layer, your thermals, long johns, they're going to wick water away. That's going to be your base. And then your insulation layer, which is often in insulation layers. So now we're talking about sweaters, shirts, fleece. And then finally you have your shell. And the shell is like your skin. It protects you from the outer elements. So it protects you from rain and wind, essentially. And then you can come up with any combination of those 3, both top and bottoms, that allows you to stay versatile from the cool morning to the hot afternoon to the cool evening as you're descending.
What about in summer? I mean, what advice would you give someone? Let's take away the elements, right, of the winter, right? Like, what would you do to prepare for a hike, no matter the time of year? What are some things people need to be mindful of and check?
So we'll circle back to the GPS device, right? Those work really well. The locations rescue teams get for those are better than anything else. Water, food, in case things don't go well.
How much?
That is all going to depend on how far you're going, how hot it is, and whether or not you're bringing a device to purify water, right?
Okay.
So that's going to vary pretty heavily. But you do want to have salty snacks that you can eat in case you get stuck. And a light that can strobe is really important. Locating a strobing light from a helicopter is very easy compared to anything. It is actually really challenging from a helicopter to find someone on the side of a mountain that's covered in trees
with just a light.
Who's wearing brown and green or whatnot. But if they are strobing out, that shows up really far away, and it is an excellent, cheap tool that's I would highly recommend whenever you're going in the wilderness.
You just mentioned the brown and green thing. Is there, as someone who's done this, right, you have to find these people, is there a color that you like? And that might be an ignorant question, but is there a color that you would recommend someone wear that you like? I picked that out.
Well, I mean, most colors where you're like, ooh, that's pretty bright.
Yeah,
that's probably
the one.
good. Yeah, right.
Okay. So
now,
no matter how you feel, like how you look leaving, right? Like, that's going to help in case of an emergency.
Yeah, I give people hard times. I'm like, hey man, looks like you're dressed to get found. That's good. I may appreciate that someday.
See? That's it. What if someone gets lost? They're by themselves. Like, what would you tell someone is the first thing to do, right? If you find yourself alone, stranded, you're pretty screwed. What is the first piece of advice you would give somebody?
Yeah. So you need to try to take some deep breaths and slow down your emotional state.
Okay.
What happens when people get lost? So when people are hiking, what happens, so provided it's not a fall, at some point they either made a wrong turn or didn't make a right turn. And usually they're not aware of that at that moment. But there's a moment sometime in the future where you realize you're lost. You realize I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And that moment is an emotional one because it comes with a sense of panic and doom and fear. And we often don't make the best decisions under panic, doom, and fear. And so you need to do an assessment. And a lot of times, if you can figure out how to turn around, that's going to be your best move.
Okay.
A lot of the time when you look at this behavior, people will instead double down and they'll push forward. And that is usually the wrong answer. And then they will continue to do that. So if you can move backwards, if you have communications, there's another time to reach out and say, hey, this is what's going on. That's really important. But if you're unsure, most of the time staying put's going to be the best thing.
Really?
And trying to get communication. Because you're closer to your point of last known at that than you're ever going to be going forward.
That's a great point.
Right?
Yeah.
And that brings up another thing. Before you leave, tell somebody, hey, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm back by. And if I'm not back by then, you need to call some people.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So even if you don't have communication in that moment, if you planned ahead, in the back of your mind, you're like, hey, when I'm overdue, okay, that's going to trigger a response. So there will be a response after this amount of time.
What would your recommendation be? Say you're out there and you're stuck and it's, nighttime, you got to go to sleep. Do you have any sleep advice for people? Like the best place to try to find shelter for sleep or, what to wear or what not to do? I don't know.
Yeah, shelter's important. So shelter is being protected from wind, water, at daytime sun, areas of rock slide, other hazards. You want to move away from that.
Yeah.
Depending on the fire risk, this is kind of a plus minus. Starting a fire may be important, or it may be a risk that is too large to mitigate given our current ecosystem. So those would be the things. And then think about how am I going to get water and food and manage those items? And how am I going to signal if there are crews coming? Back to your strobe light.
Are animals a risk?
Sure. They're a risk. I think how big of a risk is going to depend on where you're at.
Okay.
I think our emotional behavior is probably a bigger risk than animals and making rash decisions. So if we're going to address things in order of appearance, staying calm, having that plan,
Don't worry about the animal right now. Yeah, stay calm, have a plan. All right, let's get off the mountains. Where's your favorite place? Where would you recommend, someone like me, not an adventurer? I'm sure people watching this that are hikers are like, this guy's an idiot. I am. I've never done any of this. Where do you recommend people just stay safe?
I mean, there's a lot of really fun hiking trails in Orange County.
Okay.
I love Crystal Cove State Park.
Crystal Cove.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's really fun. There is a adjacent regional park system right next to it with great hiking and mountain biking. I'm up there as much as I can be. You want to find a place where it feels beautiful, but you're not far from people and stuff. And that's a great place for you to go out and make mistakes and not have consequences.
Yeah. Anything else you want people to know, right? Any like strong feelings you have to
check the weather.
Yep.
Let people know where you're going when you're going to overdue. Have your light. Get your satellite system if you're going to be far off. Have some water. Footwear with ankle support.
Yep. Good.
Over the years, the number of people I have rescued from mountains that aren't wearing shoes is mind-boggling to me.
Really?
It is up to 20%. And I always ask them, like, what happened to your shoes? And I think just having decent footwear, not flip-flops, ankle protection, and just keeping it on your feet, so helpful.
Yeah.
It's obviously mobility doesn't work so well on bare feet.
Yeah. Listen, I never in my life intend to put myself in a situation where I need to be rescued. If I do, I don't want to see any other face but yours. I want you swooping in. You're going to take care of me. Dr. Katzer, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time.